In the headlines, voters speak out. New leaders in Hampton Roads will examine the outcomes of Election Day in tonight's roundtable. This is What Matters. Good evening, I'm Cathy Lewis. We have a new face in the mayor's seat in Newport News and a big upset on Norfolk City Council. Those just two of the results from Tuesday night's municipal elections. Tonight, we're focusing on Newport News and Norfolk because some of the results in those cities suggested some interesting trends. In the Norfolk mayor's race, the incumbent Paul Frame rode to a win by a large margin over his nearest competitor, City Council Representative Dawn Hester. And in Newport News, in his first run for public office, Dr. McKinley Price bested City Council Representative Patricia Woodbury, who will continue to serve on the council that will be led by her election opponent. Tonight, we are very glad to have with us Newport News Mayor-Elect Price, along with Norfolk City Councilman-Elect Tommy Smigiel. Also with us, Harry Minium from the Virginian-Pilot and Joe Lawlor from the Daily Press. Welcome and thanks to all of you for being with us. I hope you got a good night's sleep at some point this week. I know election night's a big night and lots leading up to it, so I hope you got some rest a little later in this week. Congratulations, Dr. Price.
Thank you.
First run for public office.
Yes.
And you took the big prize there.
Yes, we did.
Tough campaign, though.
It was a tough campaign. Long, but energetic, but we did well.
I remember talking to observers of your race who said, he's got this, and the people who worked on your campaign never really bought into that idea.
No.
I mean, they were always very clear that this was going to be a tough race.
Yes, and we ran like we were 20 points behind throughout the whole race.
And what do you attribute your victory? What do you think, what message did you have that you think resonated with the voters?
I think the message of trying to be one city, trying to get everybody a voice at the table, trying to make sure that we continued on an environment where business was wanted, and I think that resonated throughout the city.
You were the person that Mayor Joe Frank was hopeful would be elected, and we have some tape from election night where Mayor Joe Frank introduced Mayor-Elect McKinley Price.
Extremely hard, and the results always matter. And I can't tell you how pleased and proud I am to present to you the next mayor of the city of Newport News, McKinley Price.
Got some screaming people, huh? So that moment came for you fairly late in the evening,
yes,
comparatively speaking. Did Dr. Woodbury call to concede, or?
No, we never got a concession call, and we were waiting to make sure that you know, mathematically there were no possibilities. You know, you don't want to go down there and declare and then have to
that's
come
awkward.
back. So we waited until we were definitely sure that things were in the bag.
We're glad to have Joe Lawlor with us tonight, new reporter on the City Beat from the Daily Press. Good to have you with us tonight.
Thanks for having me here.
Yeah, relatively new, I should say. So this was your first sort of foray into this in the Newport News area. Mm-hmm. And I'm wondering, you know, what do you make of this situation? Dr. Price is saying he did not get a concession call from Dr. Woodbury, who will still be serving on council when he assumes the leadership of the council. What do you make? What does your reporting make of that?
Well, it could spell some trouble down the line, but you know, at the same time, you have to say to yourself, this was also, you know, heat of the moment, emotional time for Pat Woodbury. So it remains to be seen how it will play out, but we'll be watching that closely to see whether, you know, it means a lot of opposition, obstructionism. She does have 3 other folks on council who tend to vote with her. She does hold some influence. So we'll have to be watching closely to see how that pans out.
I thought it was interesting that the comment that was in the paper, the post-election comment that was in the paper, was something along the lines of, well, we don't really know. We'll have to wait and see if he'll be a good mayor. It wasn't, if I may say, the sort of endorsement that we're accustomed to in the political arena, where the person who does not win sort of says, we're in it for the good of the city, and I back him 100%.
It was almost like she was still in campaign mode in a way, where she was still fighting the battle, even though the battle was over.
So, Dr. Price, what do you do as a leader with that situation? Have you heard from her since the campaign?
No, we haven't had an opportunity to speak, but, you know, we're going to present what we believe is a mandate from the city. The way the election went, we're going to go forward with our platform, and she'll be welcome to join in and blend in with that, and we look forward to her comments about what we plan to do.
And so Newport News is such an interesting city because of its geography. It's a very elongated city, and you could say that it's divided up into maybe at least 3 sections. One of the things we heard about your candidacy is that you were the favored person, and I think you know, Mayor Frank certainly was very clear about where his preferences were on that. That you were the favorite of the business community, and that your election suggests to some that the other portions of the city, that it was not a win for the other areas of the city. I wonder how you would respond to that.
We don't agree with that. I think the thing that we have to get out to the public is that the center of the city is going to be the economic engine, and that's going to create the funds that are going to be needed to be able to do things in both of the other ends of the city. So, you know, jobs, big business, small business, growing businesses, growing jobs is going to be a prime thing for us to do, so that we'll have the funds to be able to go into the neighborhoods in the other ends of the city.
Certainly the other news from election night in the city of Norfolk was that there were 4 candidates on the ballot. Paul Frame, the incumbent, winning re-election. Harry Minium, there was some discussion in the closing days of the campaign that race too might have been closer than it eventually was.
Well, I was on the phone with Paul Frame about 7:15, and he was speculating to me maybe 52, 53%. And of course, he won with 64%. It was, in my estimation, an overwhelming endorsement of the status quo as far as the course of mayor is set for the city.
So if we look at the implications for the next closest competitor, Dawn Hester, city councilwoman currently, very interesting what the charter calls for when 2 people on council run for the mayor spot.
Well, the charter calls for her to give up her seat by June 30th. However, a state law was signed into existence on April 11th by Bob McDonnell that specifies Norfolk must hold a special election to fill that seat. So we're going to have a special election in November. The council had assumed that they would appoint her successor, and now that's not the case. And I haven't really delved into it, but there's some council members who are upset because when they did this charter change years ago, they didn't want someone who is a sitting member of council to run for mayor and then, you know, have a chance to hold on to their seat. So
they did not want that?
They did not want that.
Oh, interesting. So in other words, you could see a scenario, if there's the requirement for a special election this fall, you could see a scenario in which Councilwoman Hester could run for her seat.
She says it's too early to say what she's going to do right now, but I'm sure there'll be a lot of people urging her to run, and if she does, she's going to be very difficult to beat. She's very popular in Ward 7.
Speaking of Ward 7, I had a call from one of the other candidates today, Dan Montague, in that race, a retired Boilermaker, who said that he is contemplating a run for that as well.
Well, Dan will make the debates interesting. He was an interesting candidate at the mayoral debates. He'd put on his hard hat and say, I'm a blue-collar worker, I'll be a full-time mayor for you. And he's just a very colorful character.
The thing about it is, though, you've got a circumstance where you could have a temporary person in that post.
Right.
So we could conceivably see 2 candidates, a temporary fill-in till the special election, and then whoever might win in the fall.
The new council will appoint a temporary successor, and then there will be election in the fall. So we could conceivably have 3 different people in that seat in about 6 or 7 months.
Wow.
So.
I think we've got some videotape from Mayor Frame's acceptance on Tuesday night.
Transportation, we've got a lot of work to do with our school system, which we're still very proud of. Continue to expand the economy. You know, I really want to run a government that everybody believes is open and transparent. And we're going to go to work on that tomorrow.
This business, and we should note that we invited Mayor Frame to be with us, and his schedule wouldn't permit it because he's on the board at VMI, and he had a meeting there. This question of openness and transparency, these were two real key buzzwords in the campaign, most frequently uttered by the two people who've already been on council to some extent. Well, also, I suspect, by the other candidates as well.
Well, I think Tommy Smigiel also, I mean, there were a lot of candidates out there who were echoing the kind of this same sentiment that too much has been done behind closed doors. We ought to put the council meetings on TV and that sort of thing. It was interesting when I talked to the mayor yesterday. He said the process for selecting Dawn's temporary successor would be open and transparent. So I think he got the message.
Does that mean televised, or?
Well, what he's saying is the council will hold interviews for, they will ask for resumes for anyone who wants to fill her seat, and they will hold public interviews, much like Virginia Beach did when Ron Villanueva won the House of Delegates.
And the call that Councilwoman Hester had made was for the working sessions to be televised as well. That's an important distinction.
That's another thing that Tommy Smigiel called for. Yeah. That's where all the work is done. That's where the presentations, the informal sessions are held in a meeting room on the 10th floor City Hall. They last about 2.5 hours. That's where the presentations from city staff come. It's where all the debates are held. It's where all the real decisions are really made. They cannot hold votes, but that's where everything really happens.
And I recognize those are not yet televised, but can the public sit in on those?
The public can sit in
if you could get off work and get down there. And
if you can find a seat, because sometimes I have a difficult time finding a seat. But
they don't have a special seat for you?
No.
I can't believe it.
But Norfolk is the only city in South Hampton Roads, I'm not sure how it is on the peninsula, that does not televise its work sessions.
And so you don't televise your work sessions?
We don't televise the work sessions.
Okay. No. Do you think that will be coming in your future as well, perhaps?
Not sure.
Yeah.
Not sure.
You mentioned Tommy Smigiel. We should note that we have, that was probably one of the greatest upsets of the night, Norfolk Councilman Randy Wright being defeated in Ward 5, and he's talking about how light rail contributed to his loss.
The project that I will be remembered for and my legacy was the project that helped bring me down tonight. But I said that when I made a decision to run, part of the reason I made that decision was that I would rather run and lose with dignity than to walk away and people say that I quit, something that I believed in. Because light rail will define not only the city of Norfolk, but it'll define the region in the future. We can't build enough roads to make up for all of the shortfalls and the problems that we've got. So it's really important, the action that we're taking, where we're headed, and for that, that'll live on.
I thought he looked pretty stunned in that. Did you have the sense, Harry, you were there? Was he?
Well, I actually was at Terrelton Elementary because I kind of sensed during the day that this was going to be a close race. And when the results came in at Terrelton, I followed him to his campaign headquarters because I knew he was in trouble. And I was there when they all got the news, and it was a complete shock. A lot of cheers. And of course, he did call Tommy.
And then you headed across town to Tommy Smigiel's party, and that was quite the party. Tommy Smigiel, welcome. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me.
We first met Tommy Smigiel, a couple of years ago when he was a national finalist for Teacher of the Year. Certainly well deserved, a first run for political office. So congratulations on a pretty substantial victory.
Sure. Yeah, it was an exciting night.
116 votes, but I think when you first filed, a lot of people probably thought, are you kidding me? You're going to go up against Randy Wright?
Absolutely. I heard that probably more than anything in this campaign. Do you know that you're taking on a juggernaut?
Right.
I've heard that quite a bit. And I said from the very beginning, I called it the little engine that could, or David versus Goliath. I think I was underestimated in the ability to run a campaign. I knew I wasn't going to be able to raise a substantial amount of money, but I knew I could run a campaign on a $20,000 budget, and from experience with working on other campaigns.
Wow. And we should note that this is the power of being in student government, because Tommy Smigiel was in student government at Norview High School, and here we are today, right?
Right, absolutely.
Good training ground.
Yes.
Yeah. So as you think about your goals for Ward 5, and then we'll talk about the city in general, what do you think resonated with the voters in your election?
Well, there's been a lot of talk that this was kind of a referendum on light rail, and I sort of disagree with that. That it was an issue, but I think it was a combination of running a good campaign, but also let's go back 6 years ago with the Bay Oaks Park issue, and also recently with the negative comments made towards school board members in the school system. I think in general, citizens in Ward 5 were telling me that they just wanted somebody who was going to speak on behalf of the people, not put their personal opinions in, represent their views, and kind of that transparency, the open government piece. And people just said, we're tired of the pet projects and fighting for those things.
Let's start a lot of conflict between the downtown projects.
Downtown and you go into Ward 5 and you look at neighborhoods that have been neglected for the last 18 years. Money has not been spent in there. We have an aging housing stock, and people are starting to see that. We're not attracting young families. People really want to see somebody who's going to put that attention back into our neighborhoods.
And just to put things in perspective, Ward 5, if you are unfamiliar with Norfolk, is the area that includes Ward's Corner and that the Ocean View.
Actually, not Ward's Corner.
I'm sorry.
It's a little bit further down, but it's the old Princess Anne County area of the city. So there's a lot of the neighborhoods that are still missing curbs and sidewalks. Right. The infrastructure is dated. And people have been talking about that. And I believe there were 1,600 more voters than 4 years ago. I think we gave them a reason to come out and vote this time. I knocked on 3,600 doors, so I talked to a lot of voters, and we had campaign volunteers that talked to voters. And so people just said, let's get somebody on there that really knows what's happening in the neighborhoods, in our schools. There's a plus to having somebody who's in the school system on city council, can really talk about the issues.
Now, will you be able to vote on the school budget since you will be covered by it?
Right, yes. There's not a conflict of interest because you vote on an overall budget. I don't vote on my direct salary. It's in there. And if there ever becomes a point where I feel like there's a conflict of interest, then we'll address it then. And but you know, Dawn Hester was an assistant principal when she was elected, and she was a school system employee. And so I don't believe there's an issue there.
You said, Harry, that you think Ward's Corner will be the big winner. In that part of the city will be the big winner.
Well, I think it's one of the big winners in the election. And Andy Protegero, who won in Ward 1, he opened his campaign by saying we need to do something in Ward's Corner. Although it didn't come out until late in the campaign, he was very close with the mayor and with Barclay Wynn. And as part of this campaign, a lot of the Ward's Corner business and civic leaders met with the mayor, met with Andy. And I don't know whether promises were made, but I think the mayor and others on council have come around to the notion that Ward's Corner needs some work, and it obviously does.
So you will have the challenge of spelling Protegero.
Yes.
I know you know how to do now, right? That's why his sign just said Andy. Smart move, that. Well, we had 2 university students running in area elections, Ryan Cooper, who turned 21 on the campaign trail in Norfolk, and Scott Foster, a senior at the College of William & Mary. Scott Foster not only won, he actually got more votes than anybody else on the ballot. We talked with him about his win this week on our public radio talk show, Hearsay.
Williamsburg needs to stay tuned on what's going on with the Surrey coal plant. That's going to be an issue for the future, especially as it progresses to the State Corporation Commission level. But also, in walking all these Williamsburg neighborhoods, I found that city services aren't being applied to the perimeter of the city as they are in the center. Got potholes, street lights, and as far as long-term upgrades like underground wiring, that stuff needs to go on in the exterior of the city. That's one of my goals.
That is Scott Foster, who won the election in Norfolk Williamsburg City Council by getting more votes than anybody else. 1,000 of them from university students. That's an amazing story. So as you think about this issue going forward then, what mandate did you hear from the people, Dr. Price?
I heard a mandate of being one city. I heard a mandate that we need to reduce the violence in our city. We're going to present a program about gangs. We have 64 gangs in our city, over 2,000 children and adults. So we need to reduce that so that we can make sure that business will want to come and stay in our area. And
I would love for you to talk for a moment about the people-to-people program, because I think you've been involved with that for a very long time, and it's really been tackling head-on this issue of gangs.
Right. People-to-people was designed to improve race relations in the city and the quality of life. And we're going to try and simulate a program similar to what Richmond did. Richmond at one time was the 5th most dangerous city in the country, and they went from 5 to 99 in 4 years. They went from solving 37% of their crime to 88%. So we're going to try and present a program similar to that and see the people from Richmond have come down, presented their program. We're going to invite them back and see if we can't bring that into the neighborhoods.
And what are some of the sort of key tenets of that program? What do you think really led to that level of success?
It's all of the services coming together in neighborhood centers.
Oh, I see.
So that you have police, churches, social workers, everybody available to the neighborhood, and counselors and people who want to come in and volunteer, being able to be in a safe environment and a place where the kids can come and find things to do other than join gangs.
Right. Tommy Smigiel, I know that Norfolk as well, as many cities do, has noted a gang issue, and I wonder what your thoughts are about it.
Absolutely. I mean, it's been increasing as working for the school system. I obviously have seen it. I think there's a lot of work that we could do in that area. The gang squad has talked to me about they need more people to help identify gang members. And I think there's the neighborhood issue once again. We have to look and see what we can do to put some resources in the neighborhoods to get kids off the street and in programs that can help them see the consequences from joining gangs.
One of the things that I think will be interesting about your service on City Council is your school experience. And as you know, Norfolk public schools have had some rough days in the last 6 months or so. So were you hearing much about that on the campaign trail? Were people talking with you much about that?
Believe it or not, it wasn't as big as the newspaper was making it out to see. But there was conversation about an elected school board, and I hope that we can have some momentum on that and have some conversations about, can we do an elected school board, and if we're not going to do an elected school board, how can we make the process more open? I think we need to look at having citizen advisory committees that help nominate candidates for the school board, and then the city council can come speak publicly, and we can look at that if we're not going to do the elected school board. But I'd really like to see our city council move to an elected school board. The citizens should have the opportunity to hold people accountable at that level, and I think you put some politics in it, you'll have some issues come out. And
every time you put politics in it, you do, right? Harry Minium, I wonder, as you think about it, you sort of do a straw poll of the council where they might be on this issue of elected school boards. What does that straw poll tell you?
They're not the votes now for an elected school board, but it was interesting that yesterday when I was asking Teresa Whibley and Paul Frame, they have 3 school board people who are coming up for reappointment in June. How are you guys going to handle that? Terry Whibley suggested that we do the same thing as we're doing with Dawn Hester's position, and that is we have public interviews, which they've never done before. I mean, in the past, you nominate someone, they go behind closed doors, they decide who it is, and you don't know anything about it until they come out. And at least in this way, people will be able to hear what candidates had to say on issues.
Joe Lawlor, I know you're relatively new to the community, and I wonder what observations you have about the way politics plays out here, having covered I guess this would be your first election, right?
First election in
here.
Virginia,
I should say here, yeah.
Right. Well, believe it or not, I found it to be fairly mild compared to some of the other elections that I've covered up in Michigan and Northeast Ohio, where it just so happened that politics was pretty rough and tumble and lots of name calling. And so really, from my experience, this was pretty mild, although there was some good, frank discussion of issues and some sniping.
And so going forward, what will you be watching for as this new council or this new mayor takes effect, and as this council composition becomes very interesting? What will you be looking for?
Well, I just think how each of the council members react to McKinley Price and what kind of coalitions Dr. Price can build, and whether or not there's currently 4 female council members on the board, and for whatever reason they've tended to share views, and obviously Pat Woodbury, Price's opponent, was one of them, and so we'll just see how that all plays out. I do know that there have already been some, it's not a complete all the time block of 4 votes. They have split up from time to time.
It'll be interesting to watch.
So, yes.
Well, thanks to all of you for being with us. Congratulations, Mr. Mayor-Elect. Welcome to Hampton Roads. Congratulations, Mr. Principal and City Council Member-Elect. And I always count on you for great stories in the pilot. So thank you so much for being with us. I'll be back in a moment with a final thought. I love election night in Hampton Roads. I love waiting for the crawl across the bottom of the screen, letting us know who's in the lead. And while we didn't talk tonight about the results in Portsmouth, Chesapeake, and Hampton, they're important nonetheless. The Daily Press and the Virginian-Pilot have done a great job of accounting for the winners and explaining what their elections may mean. My favorite race of the night, though, was that one in Williamsburg. There was some grumbling that it was all those college kids who put Scott Foster over the top. And since they represented two-thirds of the vote, they certainly were critical. Some suggested that Foster and students like him should run in their own hometowns or wait until they're settled somewhere to jump into local leadership. But I think that attitude cheats us of what youth and enthusiasm bring to the table. Sure, Mr. Foster will find out that the work of political leadership is complex, but since he's hoping to attend law school at William & Mary, I suspect he'll be at least as well prepared as some other challengers I've seen over the many years in this business. Besides, to suggest that young people over 18 don't get to fully exercise their voting rights until they're settled somewhere suggests that the students aren't really fully franchised voters. We should all be able to make our voices heard in our own little corner of the world. And for students, that's often a college campus located within a city or a county whose rules and regulations will have real impacts on their lives. So they should have the right to influence that process. Besides, we have a low enough voter turnout as it is. If running for public office in college sends young people the very real message that citizenship matters, I say raise your right hand and let's get more Scott Fosters sworn in, even if they do have to take a final the day after election, as Mr. Foster did. Well, there are a number of ways that you can reach us here at What Matters. On our website, it's whatmatters.tv. You can watch this program and any of our past ones. Drop us an email, join us on our Facebook page, sign up for our weekly e-bits, and we'll be glad to let you know what we're working on in the weeks ahead. For more local talk, I hope you'll join us on the radio dial for Hearsay on 89.5 WHRV, and you can listen in live every weekday at noon. We will take your calls. So thanks again for watching. I'm Cathy Lewis. We'll see you next time for another look at What Matters.